Thanks for joining me. I'm photographer and cinematographer Drew Geraci, and this is volume 3 of my inspirational prompts. If you're interested in making AI art yourself, I highly suggest taking a look at Peter Sasabo's Promptomania at promptomania.com. It now covers both Midjourney and Stable Diffusion, and it's really great if you want to easily start creating AI-generated imagery, and it's free. Now let's talk prompts. The first thing we're going to take a look at is the new seed system that I've been using, and it's not new to me. Well, I should say it's new to me, but the seeds really allow you to come up with really cool and intricate scenes that you can then come back to later on if you want to modify them or edit them. For this particular one, it's really about a wasteland and a steampunk environment. Maybe it's the future. But what I can see is with the new Midjourney version 3 is that the textures and that the realism has really started to come through, especially if you look at the clouds in the foreground with the plant life. And it's really remarkable just to see that we're now able to achieve these kind of feats. But at the same time, there's still a lot of things that Midjourney isn't getting necessarily, right? Obviously, it's taking its own interpretation of things. This horse, for instance, wasn't exactly what I had wanted, but I still think it looks pretty neat, and I think the Midjourney is doing a great job coming up with the intricate detail. And then, of course, in my Western, I want to have a graveyard where all of the steampunk cowboys have long gone and passed away, but really neat landscape textures here, especially using depth of field, makes it look much more cinematic. For the second prompt, what we're talking about is looking at butterflies, creating organic atmospheres, and also, incorporating those with things that are a little more fun, a little more fantasy-like. So in this instance, we're using the prompt to generate the Milky Way behind a field of butterflies. And what I'm doing through these prompts, though, is I'm going through and changing the colors, changing just a few of the seeds here and there. And what you can do is you can really, again, create a nice, beautiful, wide, medium, and tight shot with a macro kind of approach to it, and it gives it a much more realistic, much more cinematic look. These scenes always just amaze me because they seem so real and lifelike, especially when you're looking at them for the first time, and it's really incredible to see what AI is generating. The next test really just coming through and trying out the new textures. Now we do have the ability to create more lifelike rock and landscape features. This was an instance just talking about creating stone rock bridges and then having nice mountainscape in the background. And I think Midjourney is doing a wonderful job compartmentalizing those types of features where you have waters and reflection, but you also get really nice texture on the rocks. Now, this is one of my favorite things right here is because we're getting into a more abstract, more artistic look. And I hate to say it, but AI is doing a wonderful job at that. And in this instance, we're creating ethereal animals. And what you can do in this prompt, if you want to later on, is just switch out the animal. I started off with a cardinal and then went to a fox and a vulpix, which if you're a Pokemon lover, you'll know what that's from. But you can come in here and create these really cool and really intricate, ornate looking animals, and they're very stylistic because we have chosen a style, if you look at the prompt, by Art Germs, and it's really doing a great job kind of depicting it in that style. Now, it's not always 100%, obviously, but it's abstract, so it doesn't have to be 100%, but you really are getting really neat and very interesting looking art, and if you're looking to get inspired, this is how it's done. Now we're going to move on to a little more dystopian future and more simplistic prompts, just saying or seeing what the world would look like without nature. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory what the world would look like without nature. And the AI has given us this really post-apocalyptic looking scene where obviously all of the humans have passed away because we are a part of nature, and there's no trees, it's just desert and gravestones. As you can see, left in our wake, the AI thinks it's just going to be some streams of water as well as some, looks like blood and our smokestacks. Something to be kind of terrified about. Now I want to go up to space, and we want to create a much more realistic kind of environment in those space futuristic kind of scenes. And I want to do both interior and exteriors, but I wanted to keep that seed the same. And by keeping the seed the same, I'm able to keep the kind of color and textures going throughout the entirety of the prompt. That way I can move and compartmentalize if I want interiors or exteriors. And if you just take a look at this, it's really diverse in what the details are looking like, as well as kind of what information the AI is coming out with. And if we go and switch between external and internal, the AI is now doing a great job kind of depicting between the two of those. going into kind of a cooler zone. We're talking more about ice caverns. And when I started this prompt, I started out with just an ice cave, and then I quickly found out that it's not great to kind of just use simple terms like ice cave. I started using ice caves that are actually located in Iceland and using those names, and you get a much more detailed, much more realistic look. As you can see here, that's when I switched over, and the rock texture and the ice and the glacial blues really coming out and really look spectacular. And given that we're only a couple months into the whole AI thing with Midjourney, it's really come a long way, and the proof is really just in these kind of imagery. You can go from simplistic to more complicated prompts, and the more complicated you get, the more details and the more intricate it's going to be overall. I do love the depth of field in this. It gives it a much more cinematic feel. Moving on to prompt 8. This is really about creating landscapes in the future and using color and light to determine what the actual scene is going to be like. For this first part, I wanted to use blues and orange to kind of create a futuristic looking matte painting, and then I switched it up and went over to the purples and blues. But it's all using the same prompt, so it's very similar, but all we're doing is creating different moods with different colors. And I also added the word water fountain or ornate water fountain because I wanted to add that to the scene. And you can see by just adding just simple words like water fountain, it changes the scene dramatically, and you get really much more interesting, much more detailed scenes. And I'm really liking these because they're becoming much more intricate in their overall detail, and they're really taking on a life of their own. The last prompt is really more living into like a fantasy world, and I wanted to kind of throw it back to my childhood inside of like a Snow White environment or Disney environment. And in this, I really wanted to make it look cinematic, so I made sure to use the word cinematic as well as depth of field. And it's just a sea of fireflies and bees and honeycomb and trees in the forest. And it's really amazing what Midjourney's done because it's kind of really nailed what I really envisioned in my head. That'll wrap it up for this inspirational prompt. I want to thank you guys for joining me. Again, I love all the comments and I love all of the messages you send me. If there's anything you want to see in particular, a prompt, or you want to learn something, just let me know down below. I'll be happy to throw a video out there. And as always, if you like what you saw, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Happy AI generating. Cheers.